Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled in the eastern part of Nigeria, there lived a young man named Ebuka. He was tall, handsome, and strong, the dream of every woman in the village. Ebuka had smooth, dark skin that glistened in the sun, and his muscles rippled with every step he took. His charm was unmatched, and even the mothers in the village would glance at him with admiration when he passed by. But despite all the attention he received, Ebuka remained humble and focused. He was a virgin, raised by his poor mother, Mama, who loved him more than life itself. Ebuka was her only child. His father had died when Mama was still pregnant with him, leaving her alone to care for their son. She poured all her love and energy into raising him the right way, teaching him to respect women and remain pure until his wedding night. As Ebuka grew older, he knew it was time to marry. His eyes had been on a young woman named Chidinma for quite some time. She was slim, dark-skinned, and very pretty. Ebuka first saw her one sunny afternoon when she was on her way to the stream to fetch water. The moment he laid eyes on her, he was captivated by her graceful walk and glowing skin. It was as if the universe had stopped for a moment just to allow him to take in her beauty. He swore that she would be his bride, and soon enough she was. Their wedding day was filled with joy, music, and laughter. People from all over the village came to celebrate, and the sound of drums echoed through the night as the young men and women danced until their feet ached. However, the true excitement came when the festivities ended, and Ebuka led Chidinma into his hut for the first time as his wife. Ebuka, being a virgin, was eager to consummate his marriage. He had been told it was his duty as a husband, but as the night went on, something strange happened. Just a few minutes into the night, Chidinma screamed and bolted out of the hut, her face pale and her body shaking. "Mama, Mama, he wants to kill me," she cried out, her voice echoing through the village. Ebuka, confused and alarmed, rushed after her, holding his groin area as if in pain. Hearing her daughter-in-law scream, Mama rushed out of her own hut, her face marked with confusion. "Chidinma, what is it?" she asked, her voice shaking with worry. Chidinma, panting and out of breath, stammered,
"Mama, he doesn't stop. He rides me like I'm a horse. He is doing it like a wild animal and I'm his prey. I can't keep up with him. His energy is too much. I can't satisfy him. My hole is wide open. He's not normal."
Ebuka stood there, his face flushed with embarrassment as Chidinma threatened to go back to her father's house. Mama, still in shock, pleaded with her, assuring her that everything would be fine and that Ebuka was just inexperienced. She promised that things would get better with time. Reluctantly, Chidinma agreed to stay. However, things did not get better. Each time Ebuka and Chidinma tried to be together, the same thing happened. Ebuka would never stop, and Chidinma was always left in pain. It didn't take long before she couldn't take it anymore. One morning, she packed her bags and went back to her father's house, leaving Ebuka heartbroken. The news spread like wildfire across the village. Some of the women pitied Chidinma, but most thought she was foolish for leaving a man like Ebuka. They whispered behind her back, saying she wasn't strong enough to handle him. Some of the young women in the village even joked that they could handle Ebuka better than Chidinma. One of these women was Neka, a tall, bold and beautiful girl who had always admired Ebuka from afar. She saw Chidinma's departure as her golden opportunity. She made it her mission to win Ebuka's heart and show him that she could give him exactly what he wanted. Neka flirted with him at every chance she got, throwing herself at him whenever they crossed paths. Eventually, Ebuka noticed her, and it wasn't long before he married Neka. On their wedding night, the same thing happened. Neka, who had entered the marriage with confidence and excitement, soon found herself screaming and running out of the hut. "I can't bear the heat," she shouted, her face flushed with fear. "He's not normal, he never gets tired." Neka didn't even wait until morning. She packed her bags that night and went straight back to her father's house. Mama was terrified. She couldn't understand what was wrong with her son. She had raised him well, taught him to be a good man, but now it seemed no woman could stay with him. In desperation, she took Ebuka to a local herbalist, hoping he would have answers. The herbalist examined Ebuka carefully, shaking his head. After a few moments, he gave them some herbs, and assured them that everything was fine and that Ebuka was perfectly healthy. Mama and Ebuka left the herbalist feeling relieved, but deep down, Mama wasn't convinced. Meanwhile, rumors about Ebuka's marriage troubles spread like wildfire through the village. The women who had once admired him now saw him as a challenge. They whispered that maybe Chidinma was too slim for Ebuka or that Neka was too big. Some believed they knew better and would be able to handle him. Soon, Ebuka found himself surrounded by women, all eager to try their luck. At first he resisted, but eventually he saw it as an opportunity to find the perfect match. He continued taking the herbs the herbalist had given him, thinking they would help. Within a few weeks, Ebuka had been with nearly all the women in the village, but each time the same thing happened. No woman could handle him, and one by one they all left, some in tears, others in fear. The village finally reached a conclusion. Something was wrong with Ebuka. Some whispered that he was cursed. The men in the village believed that Ebuka wasn't normal and kept their distance from him. Ebuka, once the village hero, was now a lonely outcast. One day, Mama could no longer bear the shame and sorrow. She decided to take Ebuka to a powerful native doctor in a neighboring village. The man, known as Baba, was feared and respected by all who knew him. People believed he had the power to see beyond the physical and into the spirit world. When Ebuka and Mama arrived at Baba's shrine, they were greeted by the smell of incense and the distant sound of drumming. Baba, an old man with a long white beard, sat in front of a fire, staring into the flames. After listening to their story, Baba let out a deep laugh and said, "You cannot rob the gods." His voice was deep and filled with mystery. Mama was confused. "What do you mean, wise one?" she asked, her voice trembling. Baba turned to Mama and said, "Do you remember the promise you made to the gods when you were seeking for a child?" Mama's heart skipped a beat. She had forgotten. Years ago, before Ebuka was born, she and her husband had been childless for many years. Desperate for a child, they went to the deity and begged for a son. The priest of the shrine had promised them that they would have a son, but on one condition: they must sacrifice 3 cows to the deity after the child was born. But before Mama could fulfill the promise, her husband died. She had been left alone and poor, and the promise had been forgotten. Baba looked at Mama and said, "The deity is angry. Ebuka is cursed because you did not fulfill your promise. If you do not act soon, the gods will take his life." Mama's hands flew to her mouth. She was overwhelmed with guilt and fear. Baba's words hit them like a ton of bricks. They had no choice but to fulfill the promise. The next day, Mama sold one of her pieces of land near the stream, a land that had been in her family for generations. With the money, they bought 3 cows and went to the shrine to offer the sacrifice. The shrine priest performed the ritual, and as the final rite was completed, a gentle breeze swept through the shrine. For the first time in months, Ebuka felt a strange sense of peace. "It is done," the priest said, nodding in approval. "The gods have accepted your offering." After the sacrifice was made, Ebuka and Mama felt a deep sense of relief. The curse, they believed, was finally behind them. But the real test was still ahead, finding a woman who would accept him, love him, and stand by him. Ebuka was hesitant at first. He had already been through so much pain and rejection. He had watched both Chidinma and Neka, women he cared for, run from him in fear. Mama, forever the optimist, encouraged him. "My son," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder, "the gods have forgiven us. You are free now. Don't let fear hold you back. Love will come to you." With his mother's words in his heart, Ebuka decided to try again. He went back to Chidinma and Neka, hoping to mend what had been broken. He apologized to them both, explaining what had caused the trouble in their marriages and assured them that the curse was lifted, but both women refused him. They had already moved on from the fear and trauma they had experienced and were not willing to risk going through it again. Ebuka was crushed but understood. They deserved peace, and he wished them well. Finding a wife in his own village now seemed impossible. The women who had once pursued him were now distant. Ebuka felt like an outcast in his own home. his once bright future now shadowed by the past. Determined not to give up, Ebuka decided to search for love outside his village. He traveled to a neighboring village, hoping to begin anew without the weight of the rumors. It was in this new village that he met Afoma. Afoma was different from any woman Ebuka had ever known. She was strong-willed, with a sharp mind and a kind heart. Her beauty was undeniable. Her skin was dark and smooth like polished ebony, and her eyes sparkled with confidence and intelligence. But what truly drew Ebuka to her was her spirit. She was brave, not one to be easily swayed by gossip or hearsay. When Ebuka first approached her, he was nervous. He had heard that the rumors about his past had reached this new village as well, and he feared that Afoma would turn him away before he even had a chance to explain himself. But to his surprise, Afoma did not care about the stories. "I've heard the rumors," she said, her eyes meeting his directly. "But I don't live by what others say. I'd rather see the truth for myself." Her words were like a balm to Ebuka's wounded heart. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt hope. Over the following weeks, Ebuka and Afoma spent time getting to know each other. Afoma listened patiently as Ebuka told her about the curse, the sacrifice, and all that he had endured. She did not flinch. In fact, her respect for him grew as she realized how much he had suffered in silence, carrying the weight of a promise that wasn't even his own. She admired his courage, his perseverance, and the love he had for his mother. When Ebuka finally asked Afoma to be his wife, she smiled and said yes. Their wedding was smaller than his previous ones, but it was filled with joy and love. Mama, seeing the happiness in her son's eyes, wiped away tears of joy. For the first time in years, she felt that everything was truly going to be all right. As the night fell and the guests began to leave, Ebuka and Afoma entered their hut for the first time as husband and wife. Ebuka's heart raced. This was the moment he had feared for so long, the moment where everything had always gone wrong in the past. He was afraid that the curse might still linger, despite the sacrifices. He looked at Afoma, who smiled back at him with reassuring eyes. "Don't be afraid," she whispered, sensing his hesitation. The night went by peacefully. For the first time, Ebuka felt what true love and connection could be like. Afoma did not scream when he entered her, did not run away, and did not fear him. Instead, she embraced him and they both found joy in each other. Ebuka had never felt such relief, such happiness. The curse had truly been lifted and Ebuka was finally free. Word spread quickly that Ebuka had found a wife who stayed. The women in his old village were in shock. How could Afoma, after hearing all the rumors, survive a night with Ebuka? Many of them whispered that she must have some secret, some special power that allowed her to do what no other woman could. The village women, once eager to have Ebuka for themselves, were now filled with curiosity and jealousy. They gathered around Afoma whenever she visited the market, asking her questions and trying to figure out what had happened. Afoma would only smile and say, "Love is not a competition. I accepted him for who he is, and he accepted me. That's all." Her words left the women speechless. They realized then that it wasn't about who could handle Ebuka, but about finding someone who truly loved him for who he was. Ebuka and Afoma became an example of love and patience in the village. Over time, the rumors about Ebuka faded, replaced by stories of his happy marriage. Together, Ebuka and Afoma had several children, each one bringing more joy into their home. Ebuka, once the lonely outcast, was now a proud father, a loving husband, and a respected man in the village. Mama remained grateful for the rest of her life. Every morning she would wake up and thank the gods for sparing her son. She never forgot the promise they had broken, and she often told the story to her grandchildren, reminding them that a promise to the gods should never be taken lightly. As she grew older, Mama watched her son's family grow, her heart swelling with pride. Ebuka had become everything she had ever dreamed he would be, a good man, a faithful husband, and a loving father. And though her journey with the gods had been filled with pain and loss, she was grateful they had shown mercy in the end. the story of Ebuka and Afoma spread far and wide, becoming a legend of sorts. It was a tale of love, redemption, and the importance of keeping promises. Ebuka, once an object of fear and pity, had become a symbol of resilience. Through it all, he had never given up hope, and in the end, he was rewarded with the love he had always sought. As years went by, the village grew, and so did Ebuka's family. His children learned the craft of carpentry from him, just as he had learned from his mother how to persevere through life's challenges. Afoma became a beloved figure in the village, known for her wisdom and kindness, much like Mama before her. Together, they built a life that was full of joy, laughter, and fulfillment, proving that even the darkest times could lead to light. Ebuka's story became a lesson for everyone around, one about patience, courage, and the belief that love, when pure and true, can overcome any obstacle. It showed that sometimes the greatest battles were not with external forces but with the burdens we carry within ourselves, and in the end, the power to overcome them lay not in fighting alone, but in finding the right person to stand by your side.